Welcome back to the Mintner Method. I'm your host, Andrew Mintner, and on today's episode, we're going to dive into the matchup between Texas and Arkansas. Now, this doesn't seem like a high-profile matchup to start. It looks as if Texas is probably going to storm through. That's probably the overall thought process, right? Even though Arkansas has looked decent in certain spots this year. This is a must. Texas needs to show up here because they cannot risk having anything extra on the line against Texas A&M in a couple of weeks in a game that they very well could lose at Kyle Field. So they have to show up here. This is their outside of the Texas A&M game. This is their hardest game that is left on their schedule, and I think this matchup is going to be a very fortuitous one for them. So starting out, we're looking at the early downs data. And remember, this data is out of 70 Power 5 teams. That includes Notre Dame. So on offense, Texas is pretty good, 17th overall on first and second downs EPA. And they're very balanced. They do like to pass the ball a decent amount on early downs. 51.4% of the time. But as you'll see, those passes are really just extensions of the run. They're not really down the field type attacks, right? So you'll see that here in a little bit. Now, when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, that is, pretty much where they're hanging their hat. They looked really, really solid against even in their loss to Georgia, they made Carson Beck look, average at best. And here against Taylon Green, I think it's just going to be a long day for him. I don't really, there's really no nice way to put that. Now, when we go to the advanced stats part of it, looking up here, there are a couple of things that stand out to me. Texas on offense, very efficient, very explosive, okay? Anybody who has watched them play this year can attest to that. They have a lot of athletes. They have a lot of versatility. And they feel like they can kind of score from anywhere on the field. So the one thing that is huge here for me is Arkansas's defensive havoc front seven is 118th overall at 7.8%. And that is an extremely concerning thing simply because Quinn Ewers, he does throw the ball short a lot and behind the line of scrimmage, but to take advantage of that heavy dosage of those short plays, when they do draw up play action, it's a longer developing play. And if there's no pressure on them, he's just gonna thrive in that environment. And so that is something that is concerning to me pretty much out the gate. And then another concerning part for the Arkansas defense is they're 112th in passing efficiency. And that really that's just going to be concerning because this type of offense that Texas runs under Sarkisian is screen heavy. It's they get ahead of the sticks. That is kind of their goal, right? And then they let the explosive plays kind of come to them. It's a la like an Oregon-esque type of depth profile when throwing the ball. Now, when we go to the opposite side, there's not really much that needs to be said about this Texas defense. They are elite across the board, no questions asked. You can see, they're not ranking under, I believe it's 50th in any one of these advanced stats. Yeah, 49th in defensive line yards was their lowest ranking in these advanced statistics. Now, Arkansas, they do have some positives on offense that I think is, something they can probably try to keep the game competitive because they are good offensively. They have high rankings. Their biggest problem is the front seven and the stuff rate, which is those are going to kind of go hand in hand because tackles for loss factor mainly into front seven havoc because they're going to be closest to the ball, et cetera. So those kind of correlate together, and that is something that I would be a little concerned about. But they did, the offense did play good enough per se against like the likes of like Tennessee, but the thing is here, I think Texas is going to probably overwhelm them in certain areas that, like a Tennessee could not. Now, when we go to the passing profiles, this is, I've harped on this time and time again, right? Texas is number one in the Power Five in passing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. They do it 35.4% of the time. They are 11th in EPA per pass attempt behind the line of scrimmage. And it is just a wacky profile. In reality, this is just an extension of the run. And so, they're passing short only 30.8% of the time. But when you put those two together, they're passing, 9 yards or less 66.3% of the time. And so this is like one of the more shocking profiles. Last year, which was interesting, is they were the only team to rank in the top 25 in behind the line of scrimmage attempts and medium attempts. And so like that was an interesting profile, but that's not really the case this year. They're sticking to this short game and this quick game, screen style, offense. And so when we come and look at like medium percent, they're 66th, 17.9%, deep 43rd, 12.4%. And like not to take away from like not moving the ball down the field, but they're 18th in EPA on these attempts. So the thing is, it's I just cannot stand it when I'm looking at an offense, even though like this is going to be a strength for them in this matchup, it still just pisses me off. Like for instance, like their EPA on medium attempts is .261, and even though they're elite on behind the line of scrimmage attempts, it's 3 times less than their medium EPA, but they're passing it behind the line of scrimmage twice as much. So, you tell me. All right. But let's look at the part that's going to really stick out here. So defensively, Arkansas is one of the absolute worst, second worst, and short attempts, Mickey Mouse attempts 9 yards or less. They're 69th in EPA per attempt. And then, it tracks right here. They're 65th in behind the line of scrimmage attempts, 66 in 1 to 9 yard short attempts. I mean, they're awful. And this is very concerning because, like we've spoke of, numerous times in the last several videos, when you have a team that can actually take advantage of a weakness, then that is extremely concerning. And the reason is, they're just like lining right up with what Texas's tendencies are. And that's a big deal. Now, when we look down the field, yeah, they're decent in the medium rank, but not really that great on deep attempts. And, we'll take a look at the opposite side with Texas because it's important to keep that in perspective. Texas is first overall in medium attempts defensively, and then fifth in attempts, 10 yards or more down the field. And then when we take a look, they're just elite in the secondary. And that's kind of been shown. And we'll kind of look a little deeper into that, on some game logs and whatnot. But, none of this is shocking. So when we go to Arkansas to kind of see where, they like to attempt the ball deep down the field. And they are actually pretty solid at it. So they're going to have the potential to, garner some big plays. But I think they're going to be few and far between. And the reason is, it's a strength-on-strength matchup as we go back here, right? 12th in passing explosiveness allowed, 45th in passing explosiveness achieved for Arkansas. So strength-on-strength, it's kind of a give and go, right? There's going to be some success for both teams, but, it's going to lie somewhere in the middle of that, right? So we like to look at kind of a litany of things. Arkansas on third and fourth down, Power 5 EPA, they're 46th overall. And these are just high leverage situations that we like to take a look at. Defensively, they're 25th overall. And then Texas is elite on defense, 10th overall, and then I believe offensively they're average. They're not great. They're 36th offensively on third and fourth down EPA. Now, the thing that really stands out to me is when we're looking at just the overall schedule, right? So the teams that have given Texas trouble are teams who are going to be able to either A, combat their short game, which Georgia dominated them in, right? They just could not out-athlete them on the perimeter, and that's what Texas is used to doing with that extension of the run. And they were just dominated in the trenches, And so that right there is one thing. If they can't stop them like that, then Texas is able to control the whole game. Now, when you look at Vanderbilt, we'll take a look at what they look like. They're not fantastical in the secondary, but they also play a different style of game where they can, take advantage of, of just schematic, issues with Diego Pavia, and he's a dog, dude. He keeps. I mean, the only game Vanderbilt has really been like, if I'm not mistaken, we'll take a look at their schedule. The only game they've really been dominated in, was last week. And that's because South Carolina is a top, probably 10 defense. They're a nightmare matchup for teams that try to, read option and do some type of RPO stuff. You just cannot beat South Carolina like that. That's the only game they've been dominated in all year. Everything else has been super close in every single game. But anyway, I digress. So as we come back, we'll take a look. Texas on the defensive side of the ball when it comes to game logs. They have dominated from a secondary standpoint. 3 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 4.6 yards per attempt. You're just not – the reason they lost to Georgia was, like we said, was not, Carson Beck. And so my thought process here is it's a strength on strength when it comes – or strength on weakness when it comes to the depth profiles and how Texas wants to run their offense. And this is a game that they have to have, right? This is the second toughest game out of the 3 that they have left. Obviously, Texas A&M being the toughest, but they cannot afford to slip up here or probably even have a bad showing, simply because they're going to get Kentucky next week, which they should win. But this game at Texas A&M is going to be for all the marbles, basically. It's going to be for SEC championship appearance. It's going to be potentially for a top 4 seed. It's going to matter a lot, because the wins that they have. If we're being brutally honest, the wins they have on their schedule are not impressive. Michigan, Oklahoma, those teams are not good. And that's okay. You can only play what is in front of you. But the biggest game of the year, they shit the bed in. And so this is probably one of their better games on their schedule that they need to have a good showing in. Arkansas on the other side, excuse me, as you can see, they are kind of a Jekyll and Hyde type team. They show up against A&M. They show up against Tennessee. They get just decimated by LSU and Mississippi. So my take on this is probably going to land somewhere in the middle of all that. Texas is not the same type of offense that Mississippi is, pushing the ball down the field with Jackson Dart. But I will say, Texas is not giving up no 31 points to this offense. And, I'm not saying Texas's defense is better than Tennessee. That's yet to be seen. But their offense is clicking on more cylinders than the lost Tennessee, offense, which everybody knows has been abysmal. But yeah, I think there's a lot of space here. I believe the line is at 13.5. That seems a little high to be going on the road in the SEC, but I just think this is a nightmare matchup for the secondary of Arkansas. And I think if Ewers is going to get into a rhythm, it's going to be a very long day. And then the defense can just kind of take over, as they more than likely will. So, but anyway, that is going to be it for today's episode. This is my second one this week. I did upload one on Monday earlier in the week. If you have any suggestions for something you want covered, you would have to comment on this video or the one before. I will do some more tomorrow, but it will be a limited amount. But yeah, if you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, share it with a family member or a friend or anybody else who would be interested in the content. And we're going to try to keep plugging away and, producing as much as we can and, keep going forward with it. All right. Well, other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.